What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Survivor Now podcast. My name is Randy, and today we are joined by Survivor royalty. She competed on the past season of Survivor Australia, Blood versus Water with her mother. Yeah, you may have heard of her. I don't think I need to go on and say the name. And as well, she had one of the saddest medevacs we've ever seen in Survivor. It was absolutely devastating. Everybody, please welcome fan favorite Nina to the show. Nina, how are you doing today?
Hey, everybody. I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing great. Been looking forward to this interview forever because you kind of got us into Survivor Australia, right? We started this podcast last July and we started covering season 41. We've always been fans of the show, and I kept hearing about Survivor Australia. And I'm like, okay, let me check this out. And we checking it out with my fellow co-anchors and everything. And we saw that, whoa, Sandra's going to be on the show and her daughter Nina's going to be on the show. We have to check this out. And it was such a great season. And we were so excited to see what type of player you would develop into. And you really did develop into your own player, which we'll get into later. But just tell us about how this all got started, because we all thought Sandra was going to be done after Winners at War. So how did this get put together? And I imagine it wasn't hard for her to convince you to come along.
Not that hard. Let's be honest. I can't remember who actually reached out to her, but somebody was like, hey, I have somebody trying to reach you. Can I give them your number? She was like, sure, whatever. My understanding as well, she was done. I mean, my mom's like 47, it's not easy, especially with how everything ended as well. And so they were like, hey, would you come do Survivor Australia? And she's like, I've heard about it. I've watched a little bit of it, and that is really, really physical. And they were like, hypothetically, if you could bring somebody with you, and my mom instantly, like, she knew what it was. It wasn't a family visit. It's going to be Blood versus Water. And she said, yep. No more questions. That's it. And they're like, okay, who do you have in mind? It was between me and my aunt. We met with one of the producers. It was individual and then with Sandra. And my aunt was up there for maybe 5 minutes. I was up there for about 30 because we just went up and down the stairs so we could stay separate. And then they did them together. 5 minutes later, she came down and was like, they're asking for you, but I'm going to stay right here because I want to hear what you're saying. And I was like, and they talked to me for about another 30 minutes. Then they were like, of course, well, you're in consideration. You're in the running. We'll get back to you shortly. And I think it wasn't even a week later. They were like, yeah, you're good. Just start doing your medical stuff, because for us, as you know, it's a lot harder. I can't call my doctor and say, see me tomorrow. Where for them, it's a lot easier. I know not in all cases, but it was like I needed the time to actually be able to get seen and make sure everything meets their requirements. And then we ended up on the show.
You've been trying to be on the show for a while now, right? Like, this wasn't when Sandra came up to you and said, hey, you want to play the game of Survivor? I imagine you were ready to go. I could be wrong, but weren't you pretty close to getting on a US season possibly at one point? Were there some talks there?
Yes, I believe it was the David versus Goliath season. Now, one, like, I'm kind of glad it didn't happen because I don't, like, where would I fit? And two, I felt like I probably wouldn't have been portrayed as I wanted to. It was more, you could tell with certain questions and certain things that it was like, you're Sandra's daughter. You're Sandra's daughter. You're the queen's mini-me. And I'm like, I am, but like, what are you trying to get from me? Mm-hmm. So yes, I did try out for that one. I made it through the entire interview process up until the end in LA. Didn't get the call back. And it was kind of like, oh, dang, like, that's weird. Because I never think, oh, yeah, duh, I'm going to get it. But I was like, all right, like, being Sandra's my mom, maybe I'll be a little bit more likely. But if anything, I'm just glad it worked out that way, because I don't think I would have been as happy with how everything would have went. And then, of course, they came along and I was like, oh, my God, after quarantining, after being stuck in the house, just work home, to not only get to play the game, but to play the game across the world, like with people and, accents. As Americans, we love our accents. So I'm just like, oh, my God, this is so cool.
That was one of the questions we got. And I didn't write it down, but one of our fans were asking about like the biggest difference since you and your mom were the only two Americans in the game, if there was like a big cultural difference in their version, was there?
Yes, there was a big cultural difference, mainly in the approach to things and celebration of things. General conversation, I get on with pretty much all of them. It's nothing like, oh, we can't understand each other. There are certain things they say where I'm just like, and Josh basically became my translator, like unintentionally. He would just be like, oh, that means this and whatever. And I'm like, okay, but nothing crazy. However, the way you approach things, you cannot be full on, blunt, aggressive, things like that, because they see it as rude or arrogant and they don't really like that. Celebrating after a challenge, you can really see, let's say, even the first one with the
doors where you had to smash through. Yep.
Yeah, so they're celebrating their jumping, and that's fine, but they still came over to us. A lot of times after challenges, whether they show it or not, somebody always shakes hands or hugs. There's no over celebration in the sense of being, like for us, somebody gets a touchdown, you do a whole dance. Like they're like, whoa, no, you need to calm down.
They're a lot nicer. So your mom was right. They're a lot nicer over there.
A lot nicer.
So I always like to start these podcasts with the same question for everyone, because there's more to this game than just the characters that the edit portrays on TV and everything. So before we even get into the game and all of that and what you could have done, what you different and all that stuff, what have you been up to since being out of the game? I know that I've been following along on social media, and I kind of know a little bit of what you've been up to. So also that was one of our fan questions as well. What was your favorite part about your trip to Australia, and how long were you out there?
Yeah, so I was supposed to be out there for 3 weeks. I actually got COVID, had to quarantine, thank God, and I'm triple vaxxed. If I wasn't, God knows what would have happened, but I only had to isolate for 7 days, so my trip got extended. But I was there for about 5 weeks, and I just bounced from city to city, state to state, and I just got to see everybody. There's only about 3 people I didn't get to see. But yeah, it was great because I had that, as most people can understand, I got completely cut off, then sent across the world. So yeah, I can have a little bit of phone discussions, but I mean, opposite time zones. So I felt very like left out and kind of, oh, I'm just over here. So the second KJ messaged me and said, Australia's opening, get your butt over here. And I'm like, booking flights. I knew I had to go. I just had to.
I was so jealous because it looks gorgeous over there. I've never been to Australia. I'm sure a lot of the people listening haven't. It looks absolutely gorgeous.
It really is, even in the cities. I mean, most Americans have seen or been to New York and things like that. That Australia has a different feel, a different smell. I like going to places where even if I'm in the city, I feel like I'm somewhere else, and you really get that over there.
Well, let's talk about your grand introduction to Australia and the game itself, because you and Sandra were kind of at a disadvantage right off the bat. And I hated that they did this to you guys, but you have everyone lined up on the mats and everything ready to start the game. And then JLP signals to the helicopter, and here comes the queen and her daughter. And that sucked. It couldn't have been like, yeah, it was awesome. It was an awesome experience, I'm sure. But instantly, everyone knows it. Holy crap, that's the queen. There's no being subtle about it. Holy crap, you're her daughter and stuff. So what was your reaction to having that grand introduction into the game? Because it had to be kind of a hindrance for you guys.
Yeah, like, I'm glad it happened that way. I'm okay with it now, but I was not okay with it then. And I did not know about it because obviously they're not just, you can't tell the contestants everything. So we do our little, like the intro, like here's our passports, we're coming from America, whatever. They're like, okay, so we're going to go out this door. Cause I'm thinking they're just saying we're coming from over the ocean. We're going to go out this door. You're going to get on the helicopter and then we're going to take off. And I'm like, okay. And then we're going to like land back and drive. And they were like, no, like you're going. And I'm like, oh no, my mom, like she can go. And they're like, get on the plane. Sorry, they're like, Nina, get on the helicopter. And I'm like, oh God, okay. Then I'm thinking, like we've seen in some seasons, people come together. Somebody's going to be on a boat. Somebody's going to be in a dune buggy or whatever. We come and I'm like, oh wow, helicopter. First, I'm about to throw up. Then I kind of calm down and I'm like, you've never been on a helicopter. Embrace this. This is cool. Then we literally come around a corner because you can see waterfalls and stuff. They're not huge, but they're out there. And I see kangaroos or whatever. Then I look and I'm like, no,
No, they did not.
no. Everyone is lined up. And I'm like, let me jump in the water.
Abort mission.
I am. And then, you can see everything, the background as well. So I'm thinking, first you see the people, then you see the challenge, then you see the crew, then you see Jonathan because he's huge. And then you just panic. Then remember how to get off the helicopter because there's procedures you have to follow so you don't get injured. We're hovering, so we're not out on the floor. Then it's get off. Then it's don't fall down the rocks. Then it's what the heck do I say when I get down there? And that's it.
Once you get to the mat though, and kind of all that, like what just happened kind of eases out of your mind. What was it like to finally be on the show? A show that for you more than anyone else is because it's so integrated in your life. I mean, it's like a huge thing for a bunch of families, but your family literally eats, sleep, and breathes Survivor. So what was that feeling of it was finally your time to compete in the game?
It felt amazing, and it almost felt like numb in the sense of I'm looking around and I'm like, am I really here? Because you're so scared that you're just like, holy crap, okay, look at everybody. Like me personally, I try to take a second to be like, actually like be present, realize what's going on. And then Jonathan starts talking. I'm like, oh crap, wait, what's going on? So it felt really cool, and it felt like a dream because my heart is racing. Like, I feel kind of dizzy and I'm trying to like focus. And then I'm like, okay, you're really, really here. Oh my God, this is going to be so much fun. Cause I know you're scared, you're anxious, you're everything because everybody feels it. But I really was thinking, oh, this is about to be fun. Lord, don't let me be first. Oh my God.
You weren't first. So that was a good thing, which we all wanted to see how your game kind of differed from your mother's and how it was similar as well. I do want to know from a fan perspective, how much harder is it out there when you actually get out and you're staying at camp and everything and the challenges? How much harder is it than what we see on TV?
A lot harder. Now, I will say it also depends on the person what is harder. So for me, camp life wasn't that bad because I had a routine. And that's something I talked to my mom about, because if I get overwhelmed by little stuff, like where are my socks, I'm just going to be irritated all day. So I had a routine of waking up, going to sleep, all that. So camp life was not that bad for me, but the heat, the bugs, the food, like everybody has exercised before, we go to the beach, it's hot, whatever. When you're doing such an intense challenge and you're that dehydrated, a few people developed coughs for more than a week. I couldn't swallow. My throat was like sticking to itself. Like it hurt. Like I had tears in my eyes. That's how dry your throats are. And you can even see in the sandbag challenge that we had water bottles next to the beams that we had to go over and under, because we were like, we can't breathe. We can't swallow. Like, guys, we can't drink this water that's sitting here. I can't remember who it was, but somebody was like, please, like, we're about to start crying. Please give us our water because this is ridiculous. But it's that heat. I have never felt heat. And, my family's from Puerto Rico. I've been other places, but that heat is no joke. When you see us and you're like, oh, why are they going so slower? They're just, swinging the thing. It's not, dude, my skin was sizzling.
See, it's much, much easier when we're sitting on the couch to judge everyone on the show and stuff. And that's why I said, you cannot judge anyone until you get out there. There's just no possible way. And I believe you, because that was the number one thing watching the season. I'm like, that heat, I can't even imagine it. It has to be way worse than any of us have ever felt. But going into the first challenge, instantly, right, we're going to pair you guys up. And you guys probably had an idea that you weren't going to play together right off the bat, and they were going to split you up just based off what we've seen from Blood versus Water. And we see Nina, it would have been Sandra first. Sandra stepped up, and then you wanted to go head on head with her. And we saw this multiple times in the challenges, you guys going head to head. And unless I missed something, you beat her every time. So was there kind of some joking back and forth there? Was this something that you guys planned? If we can go head to head, we're going to do it.
We did not plan it, but I knew I wanted to at least do it once. And then after that, like for example, Sophie was on the other tribe. I was like, ooh, I'd rather go against my mom. And then Michelle was on the other tribe, and hearing what Melissa said about her playing sports and stuff, I was like, oh, I'd rather go against my mom. So it just happened that a lot of times I would go against her, and they would also volunteer me to go against her, either one, strategically, or two, they really just didn't want to mess with her because then she gets a little agitated.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was smack talk, especially at the kind of wrestling challenge with the bags where you kind of push each other. And she said that she wasn't going to pay for my wedding. And then Chrissy was like, you won't have to pay for her wedding when she get this $500,000, whatever. And I was like, that's right, Chrissy. Then I was like, don't say that. Don't say that. And then she fell into the water, and I don't think they showed it because I actually turned to JLP and I was like,
oh no,
I jumped into the water. But that's my explanation and like example of, you can't, like, I wasn't like, yeah, all this. I was just like, okay.
Oh, see, this is why a lot of people like to call you like the princess. And I hate that term because, one, I don't think it's fair to you to be stuck in, Sandra has such a big survivor shadow, and I don't want you to be stuck in that shadow. That's why I say you're the queen of, and I think Mark has backed me up on this, the queen of Australian Survivor.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I like that nickname much more. But I do have a question about Mark, because while we were watching the season, you start off on the Water Tribe. The first two votes, it goes Andy and then Brianna. Where were you in terms of alliances? Who were you working with on that Water Tribe? Because I thought you were super close with Mark at the beginning, but I didn't know exactly how close you were.
So it happened that we were very, I would say, like strategically close, because both votes, he was the first person I talked to. My perspective was nobody was doing serious strat chat, and I'm like craving it, but because I'm like, oh, you got to go hard, you got to, because that's what the Americans do. But I was like, you got to calm down and not make them think you got ants in your pants. And he just happened to be the first person to actually say something seriously and want to hear me out. And I said, boom, we're done. So we actually talked first at the well. Jordy walked up. The next time with the Brianna vote, we went to the well. Jordy walks up. We do the same thing. And then we're like, actually, we need to separate. This isn't good. And then after the Brianna vote, because I worked with him the closest on that, I then told myself, who do I want to work with and who don't I want to work with, or just unsure about? And I took it upon myself to take each person and say, I want to work with you and I want to work with blah, blah, blah. And I listed everybody out. And I was like, Mark first, Jordy second, because he just happened to be there. And he was like, kind of like a yes man at the time. So he was like, yeah, good, done, because nobody else was doing the strat chat. And then I said, Josh, Alex, Mel, and KJ. Con, Chrissy, Shay, unsure of, because, either the discussions weren't that serious or Shay was really stuck with Brianna. Andy and Brianna were gone. And I don't think I'm missing anybody.
I think you covered everyone there. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I took it upon, and don't ask me why I did it. I don't know why. I went to them and I said, Josh, I want to work with you. And I want to work with Alex, Jordy, Mark, Mel, and KJ. If they don't vibe with you, or you don't vibe with them, that's perfectly fine. But I just want you to know where I stand, and hopefully we can do something. And that was it.
I asked Mark kind of a similar question when I had the talk with him, because that was my big thing before you. And we're going to get to the unfortunate moment you had to leave the game as well a little bit later here. But before that moment, a lot of people like to talk about what would have changed and all that. That's a question we have later as well. But I was like, I feel like Mark and Nina would have worked well together into the merge and all that, and really would have changed the game. But Mark said you guys were close, but he felt during the game you were growing closer to Josh as the game went on. Is that a fair assessment?
Very fair, 100%. To the point where, like, what me and Mark had kind of got put on the back burner. And hindsight, I wish I didn't do that. Um, but I trusted Josh so much that I'm glad I did. Like there was a reason, but I'm also like, dang, I did have something really good with Mark. And because Josh then came in with a similar presence, but a little bit more upfront, I went with him, where Mark would say, you know, what he wants to say, ask me what he wants to ask me, have this. But I always felt like there was something else in his mind. Like he is gonna, but now he's watching me. Where Josh was like, no, we're working together. Mark said, we're working together, but he's also watching me, if that makes sense. So I wish I hadn't done it, but there was a reason I did do it.
Okay, so Josh and Mark, they both followed you over to the Blood Tribe. We can go ahead and jump over to when that tribe swap happened. And at this moment, we finally were going to get to see what I'm sure everyone, especially us American fans, wanted to see. And that was you play with your mom, Sandra. So in that moment, when you finally realize you're on the same tribe as your mom, is that a moment that you're like, oh crap, this is not good at all? Or is this a moment that you're like, wow, this is cool, I can't wait?
Instant, no, Jesus God, please don't do this to me. After, okay, let's figure it out. Let's make the most of it, because you can't change it. And then if I start panicking too much, people are going to be like, why are you panicking so much? Especially because they hadn't met her yet. And I wasn't sure what she was doing around camp. Was she being loud? Was she being quiet? And if I'm panicking, then they're going to be like, already red flag. So yeah, I was not happy about it, but I was okay with it, because what can you do?
I obviously can't, like, I don't know what was going through your mind at the time, but it seemed to me that you weren't really looking to work with your mom. Like, you wanted to keep her in the game if you could, but it didn't. And you did end up voting her out of the game and making that tough decision to vote out a loved one. It seemed to me you were going to do everything you could to keep her in the game, but you weren't going to let her destroy your game and the alliances that you made along the way. Is that a fair assessment, as well as you were just going to keep her in if you could, but the moment you couldn't, and you knew that target was just going to get bigger and bigger as the game went on, you would have to chop her out the game?
100% fair. We talked about it a little bit before, where it was, let's try and take each other as far as possible if we come together. But if it does not work, we're not going to hinder each other's game. More on my part than her part, because, for example, her watching the guys, I bonded with them genuinely. And I feel like the people I would have played with aren't the people she would have played with, or it would have been like a half and half. So I'm not going to let you ruin what I have been doing. And I only say ruin because of how strong-minded she is and how she will not hold back, which is why she's such a good player. But then if you're going to actually affect my game, I can't allow that to happen. So I really was trying everything to not make it be her. And I actually thought it wasn't her until the very last minute. Like, Josh looked at me and was like, and I was like, oh, crap. Okay, what can I do? Because I wanted Mel gone, because she was very indifferent. And if you aren't with me, you are with me, and there's somebody here that I don't know,
they got to go.
Yeah, I can't. And I actually thought it was her until the last minute. And so I had to then scramble to try and figure out, where can I go, but also try and get my mom to not vote her, because then it's going to be like, I thought it was blue strong, Nina. Why did your mom vote out? You know? So yeah, that's a fair assessment. And unfortunately it went the way it went, but it did not affect my relationships, which is what was most important.
Did she give you a good old pat on the back? I could see Sandra giving you a pat on the back, like, yeah, you got me.
Yeah, she was a little salty, but my dad is also retiring. So she was kind of like most people say, even Sophie, you think you're going home and then you get that, oh, okay. Like I'm mad, but I get to go eat. I get to go see my husband. I get to do this. I get to do that. Where, Sophie then had to come back, where my mom was like, no, you're actually going home. So yeah, it was a little bit of a relief for her. And then her just having the opportunity to actually come out there and be one of the few players who gets to cross countries is really, really cool.
It was just tough to see it on day 16. I was like, Nina, don't vote your mom out on day 16. Just one more tribal here.
The funniest thing is we knew, like, we we know about it. And I was like, Mom, today's day 16. And then for Mark, I think his was day 17 or something like that.
Ooh.
And so we were like, oh crap. Like in my mind, I'm like, I hope it's neither one of them. Let me try and get somebody else. And then here goes freaking Jordy, Josh, and Mark. And they're like, no, let it be Sandra. And I'm like, dang it. But it's also like, it's one of those things where it's so out of your hands. Like that to me was a turning point in the game where I was like, a lot of things were going my way, luckily, that I was like, don't forget this is Survivor and you don't know everything. Like you're sitting here thinking everything is fine and dandy, but stuff is happening over there. And I kind of started forgetting that. So it was kind of like a punch in the gut and a reality check at the same time.
I'm on the side. The last thing I'll say about this subject of you voting out your mom, I loved it. I thought it was the best decision for you in the game. And I was like, side with your alliance here. Cause that can, especially in Blood versus Water, you see a lot of people they have a wonderful game going and then they throw it away because they're like, you have to work with your loved one. No, you don't. My brother and I would vote each other out the moment we got like the chance to.
She's the queen.
What'd you say?
She's the queen. She's done enough. If she can stay, if she can't, then so be it.
That was, for me, that was the moment where it's like, okay, Nina has taken over. She's slayed the queen. Let's get to the very tough day. It was very difficult to watch. So it was a reward challenge, the one where you had to slide down, grab a ball, and then shoot a hoop at the end of it. And it didn't look like a hard hit at the moment, but it doesn't have to be a hard hit to just roll over on your ankle. So what exactly happened once you headed down that slide and had the injury occur?
The funniest thing is it happened so fast. I thought I went down the slide straight. And then I watch it months later and I'm like flipped around. And it's one of those things when you're watching the show back that you're like, huh. But it had rained. We had one of our little storms like the day before. So the water level was higher and there was like mud and stuff. So what you didn't see is under the water, thick mud. And that's why when you see us running, we're like pulling ourselves. So what happened was I'm coming down sideways. This foot hit the water into the mud and then my body flung over that way.
Oh,
so, wow. Which way can I do? I don't know if I could do it with my wrist, but this water, my foot got stuck into the mud and my body flung that way. So then right here just went pop. And then it literally took a piece of bone. And I have never broken, sprained anything in my life. So of course you see me get up and I'm like, what the heck? Like this kind of hurts. And then I'm like hobbling. And then I tried to put my weight on it one more time because I can't lift this leg up out of the mud without putting this one down. And that's when I finally fell. And then everybody was like, whoa, what's going on? And the frustrating thing is during that challenge, I wasn't the only person who actually like got something from the mud, which was really frustrating because I'm like,
they just painted you as the one person who got hurt there.
Yeah. And I mean, injuries happen. It's the game. It's part of it. But I'm just like, really? But
well, I mean, it was difficult to watch, especially for me in this moment, because I'm sure a lot of people were holding out hope, not saying I wasn't, that you would still be able to continue, but it almost hit me in that moment, just seeing how much pain you were in. And as you guys won the challenge and headed on to the reward, but just seeing you get carried out and stuff, I was thinking this could not be good. So put us in your mindset. Were you still like, I'll be fine, I'll be able to go? Or were you like, guys, this is hurting a lot?
No, it was throbbing, but I just imagine stubbing your toe. Like you stubbed your pinky toe and then years later you find out it was actually broken. Like it's throbbing, it hurts, but it's there. And then at one point I could actually stand up. I didn't put all of my weight on it. I was this way. Then they were like, no, just sit back down. Don't worry about it. And then it started swelling and I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever, that happens. And then Mark carried me out just to be safe. And then I get to the challenge, the reward where we actually sit down and I can't even, because I was like, let me just walk this little bit. I couldn't. Like at one point it was Jordy and Josh, and then Josh switched with Jordan and they were all carrying me like to get, because it was a walk and it was a hill. So everybody's like switching, holding me because I couldn't do it. And the type of person I am, I can get wound up. So I'm like, calm down. You're about to eat. You're hungry. Relax. Have a good time. Watch people because
that KFC had to taste amazing after the reward.
KFC. It was ours was the picnic. It was like a
That's right. That's right. Okay, yes.
I never had KFC. But it was good because it was refreshing, like fruits and stuff, more healthy things.
That's right. Yeah.
You see burgers and stuff, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, I don't want empty calories. I want like really good food that's gonna fill me that I can eat a lot of. But yeah, and then the doctor came, and when he came, I was like, oh my God. And then he pressed on it, and I was like, oh Jesus. And I was like, yep, this isn't good, because he was like, we need to do x-rays. And I'm like, oh, and thankfully they have the 24-hour thing. That's when I started panicking, but I still think to myself, don't get ahead of yourself, stay in game mode, because if you start spiraling, you're going to forget everything that's happened. And then unfortunately the result was that I could not continue. I kind of wish that I took that reward to talk to people a little bit, but I didn't want to ruin the moment. Like, everybody was in a good mood. But that's how the cookie crumbles.
It was devastating to watch the car come in. As soon as he said, bring her in, and I saw the car. And then, I mean, I don't know if you planned this, but I believe you stepped like boot first or something. And we saw the boot and we were like, oh no. I knew in that moment that your time in the game had come to an end. And it was so difficult to watch. My memory's terrible. I've seen all the seasons and stuff, so I can't really look back on a lot of the medical effects that we had, but you seem to be in such a great position and you were playing such a great game. How tough was it to come to terms with the fact that your time in the game was coming to an end? Because it brought me to tears, and I'm sure it brought a lot of other people to tears in that moment.
It was really tough because I had, from that point even till now, seeing certain people, communicating with certain people, I had a lot of the castmates say like, wow. And then obviously what JLP said, crew that helps me get home, some of them were even emotional. And I'm just like, and they can't tell you anything, but why would somebody be that upset if I was going to be next to go home, So it was tough for me because I had nobody to process stuff with. Yes, I had my mom, but she wasn't on my tribe. She wasn't in my alliance. She can't really give me information that I was dying to know. And so it really was a lot because I was then cut off and just alone. Yeah. And I knew I was in a good spot. And not a lot of people can say that. Like, I know I wouldn't have been next. At the least, I wouldn't have been next. And so it kind of sucks because, if you're like in the hot seat, you're at the bottom, you've been fighting, then you're kind of like, oh, it's not going to be any easier, but you're like, I would have probably gone home next anyways. But I'm like, no, I
think you were a shoo-in for the merge.
I think based on how the game was going, I would have at least made it to merge.
I was torn. That takes us to our next point. I was torn to ask this, but we had so many people. It was one of our most asked questions. It's hard and sometimes not fun to look at the what ifs and stuff like that. And I think where I'm going with this question. If that injury did not happen and you were to stay in the game, what do you believe would have been the main thing now that you've watched the season play out that would have changed? Because there was a lot that happened post-merge, including the second idol, whether that's here or not, and then the divisions that happened.
So it's hard because, and I'm like, I don't know why I just did that. Okay. And I can have an honest answer after having seen everybody and getting the extra information. So one thing, for example, I never met Jesse, but I actually get on with him like really, really well, probably the most out of everybody. Like, we could probably be like really good friends if I lived over there. And he was working with Sam. And then of course I'm super close with Josh, and I'm good with Mark, but at that point our relationship wasn't solid. So with that, going into merge, I don't know if that like tight six would have lasted as long as it would have lasted. My thought process, just me, is the more people, the more sneaky stuff I can do. So I told Josh, honestly, I would have tried to get Jordan out. And then watching the game, I don't know. It's very 50-50 if I would have actually worked with Sam or not. Because me, Josh, and Mark have very similar kind of gameplay, where she can be a little bit more intense. And then I get along with Jesse in real life. So it's, would I have been with them? And then how a lot of people were like, oh, what is Sammy doing? Whatever. Would I have been a part of that and been like, dude, don't say next vote now, like now? Or would I have gotten on with Jesse and he would have convinced me, no, she's cool. And then Mark been like, of course he's going to say, no, maybe we can do something. And then would it have flipped that, oh, well, let's get Jordan then. Don't think the tight six would have been there. I can't really comment on the idol thing because, I mean, would I be watching? Would I, however, if watching it the way Jordy was playing, I would have gravitated towards him. I'm not going to lie, because he was like on the bottom, clawing his way up. And I know comments were made where people didn't actually believe that they had the idol because Jordy messed up. However, nobody was really feeding off of it. And I'm like, you guys there was good gameplay, but my one critique is I feel like there was a lot of no. And I'm like, can we at least explore the option?
Yes.
Or use it. Like, love Mark and Sam, but if Jordy is pushing that hard and having met him
for so long too, even after Purgatory, when he came back in the game, why would he keep the story if you've already voted him out once? He would have moved past it. So if he's still bringing it up, it's got to be there.
Why would he keep on, and why is nobody feeding off of it to at least, especially me, I would have came in as a single. I would have wanted couples split up. Like that would have been my thing. How can I split these couples up without it being my fault? Because I told Josh, I said I would have tried to get Jordan out, but made it look like it was somebody else. And then I'm like, no, bro, I swear it wasn't me. And then go on from there. And probably if I clicked with Jesse, I would have tried to get Jordy out instead. And then I already clicked with Mark, but then never met Sam. So would I clicked with her? But I would have tried to split up couples.
I want to say, I think that's how the game should have worked out if everyone played their best game. Like I said, I wasn't out there, so I can't judge too hard, but I think that would have been smart for the singles to get together. And before hearing your assessment, my assessment was, everyone has their own ideas. Man, if Nina didn't leave the game, what would have happened? I think it's funny that you brought up Mark and Sam, because I was saying Mark would have had to choose between Nina and Sam. Because I don't feel like Nina would have went in the game and said, yeah, I'll just work with you two. I don't think that would have happened.
I don't think so either. And I talked to, I did an interview like 2 days ago. And one of them also Shannon made a point that when you look at Sam and Mark and me and my mom, in a way, gameplay is a little bit similar. My mom and Sam are full on prep. We need lists. We need this. We need that. When me and Mark are like, calm down. Let's look at what's going on here. To be perfectly honest, watching and only watching and knowing who I played with, I don't think I would have played with Sam, or at least it would have only been short term. Because like, even I think they showed in some parts, I think it was like Josh was like, yo, what is she doing? Like she's running around, and then, her and Mark have to have chats and like do their little thing and stuff, which makes me paranoid because, oh crap, I want to work with Mark, but is she feeding him stuff? Because one thing I did hear was that they were talking about me on Red Tribe, because I asked everybody, my name never came up, did it? And they were like, no, not really. But apparently Red Tribe said if I made it to merge, which Sam was a part of, I would have had to gone next. But you see how Red 2.0 came in and they stuck really, really close. And I would have been a part of that. So could they have torn us up? I don't know, or at least gotten me out, but I don't think I would have worked with Sam, at least not long term. The question is, what would have happened? Would it have been me? Would it have been a group thing? Would Mark be like super furious because you see him like push Shay away? He didn't even want to hug her. So it's a good question, but I do think me and Mark probably would have gravitated back towards each other after merge. And I kind of wish that I didn't separate myself from him as much as I did.
So I don't know if your past relationship in the game with Mark would have went into this, but let's put yourself on the jury. Say you have a vote for the final three, and what you know, because I know you weren't there in the moment, so you're just like all of us watching it from the TV perspective, but you might have been able to talk to them about it as well. Where would your vote have gone from based off the knowledge you know?
I probably would have voted Mark. Even like say, so from the day that I left, it would have been a toss up between Mark and Shay because I was so close to her. I got a little bit more perspective on what she was doing that nobody else really did because she kind of got cut off from a lot of people. But knowing what I do know and having watched it, I would have voted for Mark. There's a lot of things that people don't see. And while Chrissy and Shay have good games and they did well and they did a lot of things, I think Mark did all of them like well-rounded. He had a really, really good pitch. And even what he was saying while I'm watching it, I'm like, he did do, because he was literally, he said, I would lay so low in the water that all you could see was my head. And I'm like, he did do that. And we all lay in the water, but he always did it. And I noticed it because I thought, like, look at this 6-foot dude floating in the water like a kid. He did it, and he would be quiet and he would be in the background, but he would talk. Like, he was always involved in conversations. I don't know how he did it, but he is one of those players that, you know, you creep into the background, but you're still playing. And so that, for me, because some people are like, oh, you would have voted Shay, duh. And I'm like, relationship, my perspective, because a lot of people feel differently. I don't look at friendships. I look at gameplay. I made a lot of friends coming out of that game, and I'm so grateful for it. But if I'm going to crown the sole survivor, if I'm going to pick who's going to represent me, it's going to be a player, not the person. Like if Jordy was down at the end, knowing what I've known, seeing what I've seen, even if I didn't get along with him, because he talked a lot, you know, you don't want to tell him everything, but I'd be like, damn, he was scraping from the bottom. He kept fighting. He kept playing. He kept doing these things. Even if I was close with Mark, even if I was close with Shay, I'd have been like, you know what? Maybe he's not my favorite in the sense that I couldn't play a full-on strategic game with him, but he did it.
So you're on the side of whoever played the best game is the person who should win, kind of regardless of, unless someone really did you dirty that you just can't stand that person. Regardless of that, whoever played the best game should be the sole survivor? Yes.
Because watching it now, I have not gotten done dirty, so it's hard for me to speak from that perspective. Mm-hmm. However, when I'm watching the game, and maybe it's because of the American version, I can separate a little bit. Because you hear and see people talk after the game, you could tell they have emotions tied to it. Of course, you're going to have emotions tied to it. But then I'm like, well, you know, this was you signed up for a game show. Like, there's going to be emotions tied to it. But isn't like what Sam did? Holy crap, guys. And then
such a great move.
That is not ethically. And I'm like, he handed it to, and I spoke with Jesse. I said, Jesse, I don't know you yet. Because I met him and I'm like, nice to meet you and whatever. Yep. And I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you do that?
I imagine Jesse just had a laugh with it.
Yeah. And that's all you can do. Like that's another reason why I think I would have gotten on with him in the game, because he really does separate, because people are like, oh, he has to be furious. Of course he was upset at the time, but he is a Survivor player. He is a Survivor fan. So for him, he's like, she did it and they got to win. And it was phenomenal. You know, he respects the gameplay. And, you know, if I had gotten done dirty, if I was in his shoes or whatever at the time, maybe I would have felt different. But just watching the game, I respect game moves.
Well, I told you this kind of the start of the show, or maybe before the podcast, but you are definitely a fan favorite. We had so many people reach out to us wanting to ask you questions and stuff. So I want to get into some of these fan questions, as many as we can do here before we officially wrap up. So the first one comes from Christian, and we talked about how you got so close on the US Survivor in the casting process. Will you ever consider going on the US show if they have you, or has Australia stolen your heart now?
Australia has my heart, but my heart is open. I am more than willing, if I get the opportunity to go out there and try. I know I'm going to have to change my mentality because it is going to be different. But I would definitely give it a go.
And then this one comes from Jeremy, and I really love this question. This is something that before the game even started, obviously very excited to see you play. And I was wondering, this is one of our first instances of a true second generation Survivor player. I mean, there's been Kelly went with her father and stuff like that. We've seen Blood versus Water before, but to have a Survivor legend, this would be the equivalent of a Boston Rob and one of his kids going on the show. So do you expect to be the starting point for, say, that next generation of Survivor kids to partake in the game? Do you see this kind of being a trend where, they kind of follow family's footsteps?
I hope so. If their kids feel as I feel, I would hope that they can bring some more in. And I think it'll also be interesting to allow those people, their kids, to step out of their shadow and create their own path. So people aren't so, I don't want to say closed-minded as if it's a bad thing, but just one way. I am my mother's daughter, but don't forget my dad raised me too. There's, little bits of me that you guys have to see and hopefully get to experience.
It had to be difficult entering the game, like I said, behind Sandra, because naturally that's how everyone's going to look. Nina, that's Sandra's daughter. I think you did a great job personally, kind of making your own character. You are Nina. We can move past the whole Sandra's daughter thing. We did have a question from Sarah, and that's going into the game. What was the biggest piece of advice that you took from your mom before getting started in the game?
What I allowed her to give me, because as I told a lot of people in quarantine for 2 weeks, I would wake up and she'd be like, we need to talk. We got to watch tonight's episode. And then hold on now. She likes to recite certain episodes from certain seasons and this and that. And I'm like, okay, completely different people, completely different Survivor. What I got from her the most was camp life, which is what I wanted to keep myself sane and clean. And especially as a woman. And the basic strategy 101, stick with the majority. Sometimes it's going to be against you. How can you flip it? I didn't want any kind of ABC. Remember when Nina did this and Shay said that? And I'm not going to remember that. I'm not going to remember these people. I'm going to be out there panicking, sweating, hungry. I want to know, how can I make my daily life easier so I can really focus on the game? And she gave me a lot of that.
And then the last fan question that I'm going to bring up here, it comes from Chris, huge supporter of the show. And thank you guys so much for sending in your questions. It really does mean a lot to us. So what's your favorite fast food place in Australia? Or you can kind of alter this as well, because you were out there for so long. What's your favorite, food out in Australia?
So we love charcuterie boards in the States, but they do it a lot. So we had the cheese platter as our first food reward. And then having traveled there, almost every person's house I went to at some point had cheese, meat, crackers, olives, whatever. And I don't like olives, but I love all of that. Now, when it comes to fast food, I had KFC over there. I had McDonald's over there, and I had Hungry Jack's, aka Burger King. And as most people know, the quality is, compared to what we eat here, looks like cardboard.
Oh, I went to Ireland last summer and the food was way better over there. Way better.
Oh my gosh. And I only had it once, but I can say the coffee is amazing. And the Asian influence over there, I had so many things I couldn't even tell you what the name of it was. There wasn't not one meal that I wouldn't repeat because everything was so good, even in their homes, even what Jesse made for me for breakfast, what Con is an exception. What Chrissy made, you know, like I would eat in their homes again because their food, the quality is just different and it's better. And a lot of times it's the most simplest thing, but I'm like, oh my God. Michelle made me Egg McMuffins almost every single morning with barbecue sauce. And I was just like, oh, that's weird. But when I would eat it, I'm like, this is so good.
I haven't ate lunch yet, so I am totally getting an appetite here. I did want to make sure, I know I said that was the last one. I want to make sure we hit Matt's here as well. Because we did cover your holiday, so we don't have to spend too much on this question. But what was your favorite moment while you were out there, if you had to pick one?
Each initial connection with everyone. Yes, places, food, things, that's all cool. But my mental state is in a good place. But I almost felt like everything was a dream because I could not connect with everybody. So to actually be like, can I hug you? Like, is Jordy as funny as he is on the show? Is Josh as serious but also goofy? Like that for me, connecting with each individual person the second I saw them in real life and I could hug them the first time takes everything.
So just a couple more questions I have for you, Nina. And what these are two questions we love asking everyone who comes on the show, because casual fans, you know, a lot of times they won't look past what happens on the show, and they are so engraved in how you are portrayed and the character that the network portrays you in. But there is experiences that you take from the game of Survivor that are going to outlive the game for years to come. There's memories, there's new friendships. So what is Nina going to take away from this Survivor experience? Because it had its ups and downs, but there's a lot of beautiful moments as well.
For me, it would be kind of the relationships again because of COVID. So we all get stuck. We have people we talk to constantly, and a lot of people we end up not talking to that aren't a part of your life anymore because you're not going out, which really sucks. But to go out there, and maybe it's not, I told them they're nicer than Canadians.
I love that.
I said that to them, and I say it a lot. You even see it on my Instagram, and I'm like, me when I thought everybody was being nice to get away with stuff, and they're actually freaking nice.
Oh my gosh.
For me, it's the relationships and valuing what I have and what I hope to have with, even though they're across the world with them, because to go out there and have people, I mean, day 5, they're like, come to Australia, stay at my house. And I'm like, I'm the type of person to show up. And they're like, why would I invite you? Because, you know, in this, I'm like, Randy, we should get lunch sometime. And you will never hear from me again.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I give the energy certain relationships deserve, like all of my energy, because it really changes your perspective of these people don't know me. We're supposed to be going against each other to do all kinds of stuff. And they're over here helping me and I have different hair than most people out there. They're helping me detangle my hair. They're making sure my back is scrubbed. I can do the same for them. And it really changes how you feel about people, especially Americans. Like, you don't make eye contact when you're walking down the street. Like, why are you looking at me? Over there, everybody's like, and I'm like,
if you guys don't understand what she's saying, I can just say from my trip to Ireland, just take a trip overseas because it will change your life. It was funny you brought up the hair. I love your hair, by the way. How was it on the island? Did it cooperate with you or no?
Yes, because I knew to do twists, I can take them out and my hair will stay individual and I can detangle it from there. So I had a strategy with my hair. If I had just went out there with it out, I probably would have been bald by now.
Well, we've had the best time speaking with you, and we've been looking forward to this forever. Pretty much once you left the game, we were like, we have to get her on the show. As I've stated multiple times, you're definitely a fan favorite. And this is a question I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but this is a tradition on this show. We don't let anyone leave without asking this very important question. And we also heard JLP on the island say, I feel like this won't be the last time we see you. So are we going to get to see Nina play the game of Survivor again?
As long as JLP doesn't break his promise. If he does. Now, the question is like timeline. Like, how long do I wait? Do I say, a year, 2 years, 3 years? Because if he breaks his promise, he's going to hear from me. Because I'm like, you can't get my hopes up. Like the way my emotions were that day to hear him say that, I'm like, oh my God. So you can't take that back.
No, you can't. And
if you try to, I'll come out to Australia myself.
You have the world backing you, by the way. Everyone saw it.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. So I'm hoping that he keeps his word, as long as everything goes well. And I hope that I'm available whenever they choose to do it. Can I ask you a question? Does anybody ever ask you a question?
I've had one question asked, and it was just about Brianna was my winner pick. So she asked why she was my winner pick.
Ah, okay, that's good. So my question is, because you asked that, whether it be the American or the Australian version, if I ever played again, especially because my edit was actually pretty accurate. So like people are aware of how I am. What would you say would be like a good strategy or something to work on or?
Oh, okay. So you want like a fan's perspective.
Yeah.
That's tough.
As best as you can do.
I would have liked to see you get kind of that Mark relationship that I was talking about. I think if you got a strong duo in the game, and I don't know if that's kind of recency bias based off how we've seen the seasons go recently, especially in the US terms of things. You used to have the big alliances, then you went to the voting blocks and all that. I think if you would have got a pair, that was my only concern for you in the game. Because like I said, I'm not just saying this. I call it how it is. And from what I saw, you were playing such a great game, but I just didn't know who was your number one. And I like having that number one. And I think it's so crucial in the game of Survivor to have them, even though you're going to have to turn your back on them eventually. I was looking at it, say we get to the merge, because you brought this up earlier as well, how people were already looking at it. Nina's got to be the first one to go once you hit merge. I don't know who would have had your back to the point that they could have changed the outcome. Like say you were super close to Josh and Josh was like your closest ally. Did Josh have enough say to completely flop the vote if everyone flip the vote if everyone else was like, no, we got to get Nina out because of her background and everything. So I think that's the only thing that I saw is I would have loved to see you have a number one, but to your credit, from what I saw, you were playing a lot of the sides of the game, but you also weren't like flipping back and forth. Like you had your core alliance, but you were also kind of listening to everyone, which is great. But that's my main thing. I would have loved to, man, that's such a good question. You put me on the spot, by the way. I would have loved to see you have that one person that had your back no matter what.
I wish they would have shown it more, but I honestly think Josh was that person. Like the Amy vote, legit, I went into the water. He looked at me and said, Nina, it's Amy. She's coming after us. And I did not talk to him for the rest of the day. And after that, we were like, yeah, we're good. Oh, something people don't know really quick.
No, you were all good. Yeah.
The day before I got injured. So me and Josh were really, really close.
So closer than the edit showed, because I thought that I said it's either Mark or it's either Josh, but see, like you said, we didn't see that, like that you guys were like this in the game.
I wish they showed it, but we really, really were. And the night before, because we actually like slept next to each other and everything. And it was like 4 a.m. We couldn't sleep. The bats are fighting or mating. Who knows what they're doing? Disgusting. And he legit was like, we were so close. And mind you, his cousin his head is right here because we're sharing a pillow. And he was like, Neens, tomorrow, before, after the reward, whatever, I want to pull you for a chat because I think that we can really do something. Like, I want to make this 100% solid. Like, we're going to kill it, because we were 100% with each other. Even if I'm like, look, I know you're with Jordan, but hear me out. Like we could do that. And then the next day I got injured. And one of the first things I thought of was like, oh my God, I had a number one. And a lot of people don't get that. And one reason, like you can kind of see one in the game, the same episode, I think I left, it made the edit where I was like, I trust Josh a lot or whatever, like randomly. Now, after we switched, like, why would I say that? I've been trusting him since like it was after Brianna, day 4 or 5. And then 2, when I left and I was on my crutches and I was like, I think it made the edit where I said, everybody has changed my experience here. Like they don't know how much they mean to me. And I actually looked back at him specifically. And when I left, I hugged him and I said, dude, you can make it to the end. Like, I swear to God. And he messaged me after saying like, you know, thank you for saying that. Like, it meant a lot to me. Cause I really like, I even told him, he helped me get back in the car. And I was like, I'm sorry, I can't be your sleeping buddy anymore. I hope like you don't get cold. You can ask anybody, like, solid.
Just add to the tears. Just like it was already such a sad moment, but just to hear, were you happy with the game he played?
Oh, I was 100% happy because I had some people like on my trip ask me that as well. And me being my mother's daughter and being aware of the game and stuff, I couldn't imagine leaving having not done anything, where I actually felt maybe I wasn't 100%, but I was giving 90% of everything that I had to talk, to make relationships, to play. I mean, giving it my all, obviously sometimes too much because I broke my ankle. But I left knowing that I actually did stuff. I was just worried that it wouldn't be portrayed and you wouldn't see what I actually did, because then I'm like, oh, I'm going to be the chick that gets injured and leaves. And everybody's like, Ma, she didn't do anything.
Oh, no.
I was running around like full on go mode.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. I can't say that enough. And I'm still applying as well. If I ever get on the island with you, if we somehow get on a season together, I can be that number one, right? We'll make that. Yeah. And then if that happens, I'll have to delete this so no one has any evidence.
They're gonna be like pre-merge. Pre-game chat.
Yeah, exactly. Well, is there anything else you have to say to everyone listening before we wrap up here, Nina?
The only thing I have to say after seeing everybody and stuff is just everybody has their opinion, but maybe just be kind online. I know everyone has their own experiences with each other. But nobody out there ever made me feel any less than as a woman or as a woman of color. Like, nobody ever made me feel like I didn't belong. Nobody ever talked over me. I'm also the type of person you can't really talk over. But
yeah.
Just, like some of the hate that I see people get, I understand, but some of it I think can just be a bit excessive, and they're just being portrayed on TV that way. And they're all, look at me, a girl from the United States who can be a bit much, getting invited to Australia by 20 something people and getting to go into their homes for sometimes a week or two. Like, have your opinions about the game, but the personal attacks, like, I just wish they weren't as brutal as they are sometimes.
Someone needed to say it. That was beautifully said, because that's the worst part, is when people look and they just judge. Like I said, go out, apply to the show, go on the game. And then after you play the game and after you're out there starving and stuff, then if you want to put some judgment, you do you. But get out there first. But Nina, you always have an open invitation. We know you're a huge fan of Survivor. Have you started season 42 yet?
I have not, because I literally was traveling and then came home, and the next day I had to jump into work. So right now, like, I'm even surprised. I haven't had coffee yet, but I've been drinking like some kind of aloe vera juice, whatever.
Yeah.
I have not, but I plan on starting tomorrow because I actually have my first day off since being back. Yeah. So I'm like, I need to get into it because I need to brush up, because you guys, I'm American. We do so many puzzles. Which unfortunately the Australian doesn't do as much, or they come a lot later. So I'm like, man, I really need to brush up on my puzzle work if I ever want to try to apply. Cause I really do. Like, I want to apply myself, and just, they call me, they don't, like, so be it. But I would love to just get that chance to go out there.
Well, you're always welcome. We've already talked about this too. If you ever want to come on and chat one of the episodes, make an appearance on a breakdown, we would love to have you. But thank you so much for joining again. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll be following along your journey. We would love to see you back out there on the island and playing again.
Fingers crossed. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.